Hello, welcome to another episode. Now, today I'm answering all your moving to Italy questions. I've been asked so many questions over the near 3 years that I've lived here in Italy to do with how I moved here, what the process was. And so today we are going to get straight into it and I'm going to answer some of them in the hope that they can help you. So let's get into it. The first question that I'm asked all the time is, how did I decide where to live in Italy? Now, obviously, where you choose to live ends up being a very personal decision and choice. But for me, I had a set of criteria or non-negotiables, shall we say, of things that absolutely had to be in the area that I decided to move to. And these were things like shops, having a local supermarket, having good transport connections like trains and buses, and being able to easily move around by myself. Because I moved here on my own, it was important that I didn't feel isolated. And so living in a more remote part of Italy just wasn't going to be suitable for me. So this was one of the set of criteria that I set for myself. Another was that I wanted to live close to the sea. I have always wanted to live near the sea. I'm from London, of course, we have the River Thames, but that's about it. And, you know, I've always wanted to live near to the sea, even when I lived in the UK. So for me, that was a criteria, and it led into my decision to want to remain in the south of Italy as opposed to the north. As well as because of the weather, because a big criteria for me was that I wanted the weather to be good. I come from London, the weather is not normally amazing. So I know in some parts of North Italy, for example, the weather can resemble a little bit like the weather in London. So I didn't want to experience any of that. So that was a big deciding factor for me as to where I wanted to move to. And another big factor was obviously feeling safe. I wanted to live somewhere where I could walk around independently, even late at night, and not be looking over my shoulder. Now, I used to be a police officer, so for this, I feel like I have a little bit of street sense, but I knew that I wanted to live somewhere where personal safety wouldn't be so problematic, if you like. So they were the criteria that I set myself, and having this list helped me to decide what area would be best for me to live, and I chose Salerno. Obviously it was in the south of Italy, which I had already fallen in love with prior to that point, but it ticked all of the boxes of the criteria that I'd set myself. So I would definitely suggest writing down your own non-negotiables, the things that you absolutely want to have in and around you, in the place where you want to move to, and this will help you to eliminate and decide which is ultimately going to be the best place for you to settle down. So the next question that I'm asked a lot is, how did I begin the whole process of moving to Italy? Now, obviously I moved to Italy in 2018. This was pre-Brexit, pre-pandemic. So things do look a little different now, especially if you're moving here from the UK. What I do know for definite is that you will need some form of a visa if you plan on living or staying here or working here even beyond the 90-day period. So for this, there is now that added complication to throw into the mix. Nothing's impossible, but this is an extra piece of paperwork and information that you need to research if you're planning to move to Italy. But having said that, for myself, my process began with obtaining what we call the Codice Fiscale, which is the key to unlocking virtually every door here in Italy. It is basically your tax code, and you need this in virtually every situation in Italy, whether you are opening a bank account, whether you are accessing healthcare, whether you need to get your identity card, whatever it may be, you need your Codice Fiscale to be able to set yourself up here in Italy and move here. So this is where I began my process, and I actually obtained my Codice Fiscale before I actually moved here. So when I was transitioning between the UK and Italy, the time that I spent here in Italy, I went to the tax office here in Salerno and I obtained my Codice Fiscale. Now, of course, I didn't have an address at that point in Italy, so I was able to register it based on the fact that I was transitioning and moving from London. So I don't know how that would work now that the UK has left Europe, but certainly that's how it worked for me. and I was issued my tax code on a piece of printed paper immediately, and I treasured it so much because I knew that that was where my journey began, and I carried it around with me everywhere because I needed it in so many different situations. And you don't actually get like a more permanent version of it until you get your Carta d'Identità, which is your identity card, or your healthcare card, your Tassa Sanitaria. I've probably said that completely wrong, but your healthcare card. They are the more permanent documents which contain your Codice Fiscale, but until that moment you have it on a piece of paper. So that is enough for you to be able to set everything up, and it's what I would recommend that you begin with. Once you have decided where you want to live, begin with your Codice Fiscale, get that sorted out, and it will make the rest of the process of setting yourself up here in Italy so much easier. So the next question that I'm asked a lot is, how did I move my belongings from the UK to Italy? Now, as I mentioned before, pre-Brexit, so I think now there are more checks and paperwork to present and consider. But for myself, I actually sold a lot of my belongings before I moved here, just because I didn't think they would fit into my new life here in Italy. I used to live in a cottage. The last couple of years of living in the UK, I actually moved to the countryside, and I lived in a cottage, and a lot of my furniture and items that I had really were like country chic furniture, which I just didn't think would fit into the whole Italian apartment living and lifestyle. So I sold a lot of my furniture, and I also made the decision not to move with any electrical items other than my iPhone and my Kindle, because of course the power supply here, the plug sockets are all different in Italy, and I didn't want to permanently run electrical appliances on adapters because I know that isn't good. So I made the decision to sell pretty much everything, like 80% of my belongings I sold. And then when I moved to Italy, I bought all my electrical appliances here in Italy, because if something goes wrong, it's not as if I could have just hop on a plane and take it back to London for an exchange. I mean, come on, much easier to resolve it in the country that you're living in. So that was my rationale behind that. So the items that were left that I did need to bring over were, I don't know, a few large boxes. On the plane, I moved with 3 suitcases, and that was what I initially set my life up here with. I didn't move with all of my wardrobe. I, again, gave some clothes away, donated it to charity shops, because I knew living in Italy, I wouldn't need 90% of the bulky winter wear that we tend to wear in the UK all year round. So I decided to cull and sort out my wardrobe and move with the essentials, and then I bought new clothes when I moved here. So I really did move with the bare minimum. But what I did need to bring over, I actually went into a Facebook expat group, and I found a person who whose job it was really just to continue to drive back and forth from the UK to Italy, transporting items for people. So I got them to do the job for me. It was very easy, efficient and inexpensive, and it worked for me because I didn't have that many items to bring, and I didn't need to pay a very large removals company to ship it over for me. So that obviously worked for me pre-Brexit. Obviously now I think it will be a little bit more complicated, but that was how I moved my items here to Italy. So the next question I'm asked is, how did I begin to sort out all of the bureaucracy of setting your life up here in Italy? And the simple answer is I prioritized. So what I would say to you is create a deadline for yourself. In 3 months' time, I want to have, I don't know, registered my residency, I want to have got my identity card, I want to have sorted out my healthcare. Set yourself a deadline, because for me, my deadline was Brexit. When I moved here, I had a few months before Brexit, the initial Brexit date before it got pushed back, was due to happen. And that was my time pressure, if you like, to get everything done, and my motivation to get everything done before that initial date. And it was amazing, it really paid off. And you know, it meant that I sorted out my residency, sorted out my healthcare, sorted out my identity card, converted my driving license, all before the initial Brexit date. And it was just such a relief, because now a lot of people are struggling with complications post-Brexit in sorting out some of these details. So I would say, if you don't have a pressing deadline to get everything done by, create one for yourself, because certainly for me it worked. I think otherwise you can get into the monotony of saying, oh, you know, I'll get around to it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week, or I'll do it in a couple of weeks' time. And then 2 or 3 months pass by and you still haven't got around to doing it. So if you create yourself some form of a deadline, at least it motivates you to get things done. So that was my order really, and it all began with the residency. So this leads very nicely into the next question. How does the residency process work here in Italy? Now, residency is what you need to really be able to establish your roots here in Italy. This enables you to open bank accounts that are all singing and all dancing. It enables you to register for healthcare. It basically enables you to set yourself up here if this is going to be your life. So it's very important that when you are here, now I know this has changed, because initially it was, if you were here, I think it was, I don't know, 2 months or a couple of months, then you had to register your residency here. I'm not sure what's differed now with Brexit. I'm actually going to put a link below to the UK Gov website, which talks about life in Italy, because that was my source of information when I was transferring here. So it may well help you too if you don't already know about it. But at some point you need to register for residency, and I would suggest that you do it ASAP, as soon as you know that this is going to be your home. And what you need to do when you go to the residency offices, which are in your comune, which is like a council building equivalent in the UK, is you need to present your rental contract or property ownership details to be able to confirm that you will actually be residing here in Italy. And along with that, you also need to provide a receipt to show that you have registered for TASA. Now, TASA is the equivalent in the UK of a council tax. It's basically what they call here the rubbish tax, and it is a compulsory tax that has to be paid by every Italian, and you need to be able to provide a receipt to show that you've registered at the TASA office, because everything in Italy is in separate offices, in order for them to begin your residency process. They will not process your application unless you have registered for TASA, or you can provide proof that the TASA has either already been paid at the residence you're going to be registering at, or there is already an account for that address in another name. So, you know, you have to provide evidence in some way, shape or form that TASA is going to be paid. It's their guarantee, if you like, that they're going to get this all important tax from you. So this is important. And also what is important, and I've mentioned it before in another video when I talk about rent and accommodation here in Italy, is that you get the right rental agreement if you have not purchased a property here, because a lot of rental agreements do not support residency applications, and this is checked by the residency office that your contract is suitable for residency purposes. So really, really important. You check your contract thoroughly, get somebody to translate it to help you if Italian is not your first language, just to be sure that you can claim residency against the address of the property you're interested in, because if you cannot, this will cause big complications for you. So just something to consider. So when they have processed all your documents, so you have to go in person for the initial visit, you bring all these documents, your passport, any other identity documents you may have with you at that time. You will also need to produce a work contract or evidence of earnings to prove that you can financially support yourself here in Italy. And this is important. You will need to provide copies of all of this. They do not tend to photocopy things for you in these government offices. You need to have already done that for yourself. And what they will do is they will register all your details, and then they will give you a printed letter that confirms that you presented yourself at the offices on that given day, and it will list the address that you have said that you were going to be resident at. And what happens after that is that 45 days is allowed from that date that you presented yourself at the offices for the local police to come and check that the address you have given is indeed your residency. And this is all detailed on the letter that they give you on the day, but it's really important you keep that letter safe, because that is proof that you have started the residency process should anybody need to check any documents, etc. But what happens is that the police do come and check where you live. Now, you hear some mixed stories about this. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I've moved a couple of times since I've lived here 3 years ago, and every time you move, you have to repeat the residency process. It gets easier because you don't have to begin again from the beginning. You just have to change your address, but you still have to repeat the process of going to the residency office every time you change your address here in Italy. So I feel like I'm a bit of a veteran when it comes to this, but the first time when I registered, no police came. I allowed the 45 days to lapse, and then automatically my residency was confirmed. So I think it's only if the police flag something in those instances that you would need to wait for the police to come, or deal with that in presence at the office. The second time I moved, the police did come and they did check that I lived where I did. And then most recently last year, the police didn't come, but again, the 45 days lapsed and my residency was automatically confirmed. So I think it's a bit hit and miss, but yes, the police can check that you live where you do. So it's important that you put your name on the doorbell, because as you may or may not know, properties here in Italy do not have individual door numbers allocated per person or per family. So your address in Italy is the building and block number and name, as opposed to a house or flat number and the street. So it's very different compared to the UK, and the only way that the police or whoever it may be can check that you live where you do is by looking on the bells or by looking on the mailboxes. So really important that you make sure your name is everywhere it needs to be in your property, like mailboxes, doorbells, and even on your own personal doorbell attached to your door as well, so that if you aren't home when the police come, potentially they could say that you do live where you do and mark it in your absence. So that's really important to remember. And when those 45 days do pass, you are issued another certificate to confirm that your residency has been confirmed. And this is the important document that you need to take to then go on to obtain some more identity documents that you require here in Italy, like the Carta di Identità, the identity card, and you can then go on to request your healthcare as well. So really important, it all stems from your residency, and I would say to get that organised as soon as you can, just so that it's the big cross and tick off the box to be able to get everything else complete here in Italy. The next question I'm asked is, did I open an Italian bank account? And the answer is yes, I did. Now, I'm really glad I did, because Brexit has meant that a lot of UK bank accounts have been closed down if people aren't resident in the UK anymore. So I'm really grateful and thankful that I chose to open an Italian bank account when I did. But also, if you're working here, it's necessary, I think. And also just for ease and convenience, like if you are constantly using an international bank card, you are going to be getting charged international fees every time you withdraw money. And also, you've got like exchange rates to consider as well. It becomes very expensive to permanently live that way. I think it's far easier to open an Italian bank account, especially when you're resident, because you get the all singing, all dancing bank account, and it's just so much simpler. And what I would say is, when it comes to opening a bank account, you will need to provide your Carta di Identità, your residency, all your identity documents. I would recommend going with a bank that is well known in Italy. And the reason I say this is because I'm with a very well known bank in Italy, UniCredit, and there are branches everywhere you can think of. But if you don't withdraw money from that particular branch, they will charge you a withdrawal fee. So if I need to use another bank's ATM, for example, I get charged a withdrawal fee for that privilege, and it varies, but usually it's around €2 every time. I really disagree with this. It's my money, I'm accessing, but this is how it works here. Whereas in the UK, they have this link scheme where basically you can use other banks' ATMs and not pay anything for it, unless you use the more private ATMs, which you find inside shops. They're the only ones you tend to get charged for. But here in Italy, it is different. So I would really recommend that you choose a bank where there are lots of branches around Italy. It's not just a very local bank, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're in a different part of the country, or you're somewhere outside of your town and you need to draw money out and there's no ATM belonging to your bank anywhere. So just consider that when you are choosing a possible bank for yourself. Also, what is required often by banks is an Italian phone number, which leads me very nicely on to my next question. My next question that I'm asked is, did I change my phone number from a UK number to an Italian one? And the answer is yes, I did. And I done it because initially it was for my bank account. I needed to have an Italian phone number for them to be able to activate my account and send me messages by text. But also, in the end, it proved to be a lot easier for bureaucracy matters as well. When you don't have an Italian phone number, you have to always keep remembering, oh, I've got to put the international prefix, my number's different. It just becomes very stressful. And if you have chosen to make Italy your home, I'm all about embracing that experience, not having like one foot back in your old country and one foot in your new country. Put both feet firmly in your new country, change your number, embrace it all. And it does make things so much easier. And honestly, you can get a pay-as-you-go SIM and pay a very, very small sum of money every month for your phone plan, and it works. It's easy. And you know, another thing that was my consideration was that I didn't know how the roaming would work post-Brexit. Obviously, when the UK left Europe, I didn't know if the roaming agreement would still happen, and it was just too complicated. So I'm really grateful that I did change my number, but this is something to consider definitely if you're going to be living here on a long-term basis. Change your number, or if you're nervous to completely change your number, get another SIM and either dual SIM it if your phone allows, or buy a cheap little phone that you can put an Italian SIM card in. Happy days, you've got the best of both worlds. So the next question that I'm asked a lot is, what did I find most difficult about the process of moving to Italy? And the simple answer to that is the language, and obviously not being able to immediately understand everything. And when you have the bureaucracy matters to deal with and you want to make sure you do everything correctly, it can be very stressful. And I'm so thankful to all the people that helped me along the way to help me to get to the point where I am today. But I'm even more thankful because the very last piece of paperwork that I had to do post-Brexit was to obtain my Carta di Soggiorno, and I done that all by myself. So huge achievement for me, considering all the other things that I had to do. I had somebody help me. So it's important that you understand the process. So if you can have somebody to translate for you or to just guide you and assist you a little bit, I would definitely recommend it. But yes, this is how I moved to Italy. These are the questions that I'm most frequently asked. If you enjoy this video, I think you will like this video as well up here, where I answer some more questions about what it's like to actually live here in Italy. So I will see you in the next video.